sure that most of you are aware by now that Roger Mayweather has passed away at the age of 58 years old. Very sad time for the sport of boxing when the world, as a cumulative, is going through a very hard time, particular to Floyd Mayweather.
Poor guy.
It's been a rough couple of days. I mean, it really has, because this news is coming on the heels of the news that the mother of three of Floyd Mayweather's children, Josie Harris, she also passed away very recently.
Last week.
Anybody who's ever lost a loved one will tell you firsthand that it doesn't get easier. It just doesn't. And having to experience this within his family, these two deaths happening so close together, Floyd Mayweather's going through a real rough time. I feel for that guy. I mean, I really do.
It's rough.
Because it's not easy, and it's one of those things that only time can heal, if it can heal it at all, you know? We remember the life of Roger Mayweather, very accomplished boxer, a two-division champion, who seemed like the proverbial uncle for very many boxing fans out there when he coined the very famous phrase, most people, they don't know shit about boxing, and to this day, that rings true. Roger Mayweather's exploits as a boxer spanned from 1981 to 1999. 72, count them, 72 professional bouts. A pro record of 59 wins, 13 losses, with 35 knockouts. Guy locked horns with anyone from Samuel Serrano to Julio Cesar Chavez 2 times.
Oh.
To Vinny Pazienza, the Pernell Whitaker, the Rocky Lockridge, the Costia Zoo. To say that Roger Mayweather has been around the block really would be an understatement. This is a man that knew his boxing. Now, when that Costia Zoo fight took place in 1995, a 34-year-old Roger Mayweather actually went the distance with Costia, where a 24-year-old Zab Judah could not, years later in 2001. I think we all remember how Costia quite famously made Zab Judah do the chicken dance in what was the second round, only the second round of their fight. It's a guy that Roger Mayweather went the distance with, okay? Roger was a good fighter. He was a good fighter. He was an accomplished guy. I say it all the time. For every world champion that you can name, there are any variety of fighters that have never been world champions that you can't name. And Roger Mayweather, we can say, was a full-fledged two-division champion.
An accomplished guy.
Who locked horns with some of the very best fighters of his time. He won some fights, he lost some fights, but he had those fights. That is now immortalized in his legacy. For some time we've known that Roger was in declining health. You know, he took a lot of punishment as a pro boxer. I think that has something to do with his condition after he walked away from the sport. We know that for a long time, he trained his nephew, Floyd Mayweather, helped him become the man and the fighter that he became. Yet another testament to Roger Mayweather's legacy. And anyone who knows anything about Floyd and Roger will know that Floyd attributes his success to the tutelage of Roger, more so than his father, Floyd Sr. I mean, anybody who followed the career of Floyd Mayweather Jr., even if you're too young to remember Roger's exploits, surely you can recall what Floyd Mayweather had to say about it, that there's only 2 Mayweathers to count. One is Roger, and the other is himself, Floyd Mayweather. That's how he felt about his uncle, what many people viewed as the uncle of many boxing fans and, many boxers. That's who Roger was. Death is never easy, even when it's expected. Coming to terms with never seeing an individual, never being able to talk to, hear from that individual, again, it's very difficult, and it doesn't get easier the more times it happens. It's a very heartbreaking situation for Floyd Mayweather, who was already grieving one death in the family, the mother of 3 of his children. He's already dealing with that, and now he is forced by the ravages of time to deal with this as well. My heart goes out to Floyd. You know, Floyd's a guy, highly polarized guy, who sometimes people say some not so nice things about. But it's inhumane to look at this situation as anything other than an opportunity to send good vibes, blessings to Floyd Mayweather. Yeah, best wishes. Because he's dealing with a lot. You know, 2 deaths in the family that close to each other. It's very difficult, very heartbreaking. My heart goes out to that guy, and my heart goes out to the memory of Roger Mayweather. And I think that moving forward, whenever we bump into some guy that doesn't have the foggiest fucking idea what he's talking about when it comes to this sport, we can think of Roger and smile.
Most motherfuckers don't know shit about boxing anyway.
Where did that phrase come from?
Motherfuckers can't train. When I say they don't know shit about boxing, most motherfuckers can't train. Don't know how to train a motherfucking fighter. Suppose you don't know shit about boxing. It's the real deal.
Thanks, Roger.
In other news, per tweet from Michael Benson, Frank Warren has announced that terms are now agreed for Carl Frampton to challenge Jamel Herring for his WBO super featherweight title. Previously said target date is June 13th in Belfast. This will be Carl Frampton's attempt to become a full-fledged 3-division champion, and that's really what brings us here. I want to preface everything I'm about to say with this. I don't give Carl very good odds to win this fight, all things considered. I think that Jamel Herring, beating Jamel Herring, the reigning WBO champion at 130 pounds, is a tall order. He's got the size, he's got the skills to make things very difficult for Carl the night of the fight. In Jamel Herring, you're talking about a very statuesque fighter for the 130-pound division. He's got the height, he's got the size, he's got the length. He's a southpaw, but he's a southpaw who just so happens to be a jabber. A jabber with a good set of legs that can make things very difficult for a smaller fighter with a lower center of gravity who needs to get mid-range to inside before he can do anything. And I've discussed this in passing, that I don't really like Carl's odds for the fight, but it being that Carl Frampton is already a very accomplished fighter with a robust body of work, we have to entertain the possibility that he could upset Jamel Herring in Belfast. I mean, at minimum, we have to entertain certain aspects of what would happen thereafter, because Carl Frampton, as it stands, is already a full-fledged 2-division champion. If he beats Jamel, that makes 3. You think about Carl Frampton's body of work. 30 professional fights, 27 wins, only 2 losses, 15 knockouts. If you know this guy's career, if you know the career of Carl Frampton, and you know how the Ring IQ pound-for-pound list works, you'll know that if Carl Frampton manages to upset Jamel Herring, he's going to be a shoo-in to get a spot on this list. That's right. This may be flying largely under the radar for most people because, well, most people, they probably figure Carl's not going to win that fight. But we have to entertain the possibility that he might. And if he does, well, he's a shoo-in to get on this list, ahead of 1 or 2 guys, yeah. Because that would make Carl a 3-division champion.
Yeah.
Like a Kosei Tanaka, for example, who's in the most danger of being buffed off. That would make Carl a 3-division champion, but he would be a 3-division champion with a more robust body of work than a Kosei Tanaka, as Carl Frampton will have unseated and defeated more active reigning world champions than Kosei has so far. That's right. He beat Kiko Martinez
in 2014
at 122 pounds for the IBF title. He then unified that title with the then WBA champion Scott Quigg. He moves up to 126 pounds. He takes on Leo Santa Cruz. He beats him for his version of the WBA title.
in 2016.
That's 3 world champions already. If Carl beats Jamel, that makes 4. Ladies and gentlemen, that's more active reigning world championship scalps than either Kosei Tanaka or Juan Francisco Estrada has collected thus far. It's more than Leo has collected as well. Leo's only really collected 2, the scalp of Victor Terraza
for the WBC
and Carl Frampton in what was their rematch. All things considered, given Carl's body of work thus far and what could be a victory over Jamel Herring, well, that would give Carl a credible enough argument that not only would he be reintegrated into the Ring IQ pound-for-pound list, but he might actually end up ahead of Leo Santa Cruz, whose quality of competition as of late has been very lackluster. I mean, he's not fighting the likes of a Jamel Herring, you know, that kind of fighter, right? No, he's not. Whereas Carl is. And if Carl wins, well, think about it, you know. Carl and Leo are 1-1 with each other. Granted that Leo won the last fight, but he never did have that tiebreaker with Carl, did he? He never did have that rubber match.
Fucking flake.
So when I cross-compare these guys' resumes, what they've done so far against others and each other, Carl just so happens to have the more robust body of work, and if he beats Jamel, he's going to have a strong enough argument that if he emerges on this list, he might even emerge ahead of Leo. I mean, we're not just looking at things that they've done, we're looking at what they've done and what they're currently doing, okay? Leo Santa Cruz became a 3-division champion by fighting Miguel Flores.
Who?
Guy who's not a champion. It was for a vacant title. Whereas if Carl becomes a 3-division champion in this scenario, he's facing an active, reigning world champion in Jamel Herring. All things considered, the scalp of a Jamel Herring is a lot better than the scalp of a Miguel Flores. You think about who these guys have been keeping busy with. You know, Carl's fight against Nonito Donaire in 2018 is a victory that perhaps at the time didn't seem like much, but here today, hindsight being 2020, is a solid win. And I say it's a solid win because since that time, Nonito Donaire had become a world champion and gave Naoya Inoue all he could handle in what was their unification fight. Currently, Nonito is in contention to challenge for yet another world title, the world title of Nordine Ubali. So when you think about that, it makes Carl's win over Nonito a credible win that perhaps at the time it didn't seem like much, but it has aged well. You think about Carl's win over the undefeated Luke Jackson. You cross-compare this stuff with what Leo Santa Cruz has been doing, and Leo Santa Cruz, he really ain't been doing much. So you get this same Carl Frampton in there with the likes of a Jamel Herring, given everything that he's done so far, including beating Leo Santa Cruz at least once. You get him in there, and you hypothesize, okay, what happens if Carl beats Jamel? And you gotta give him the credit. You've got to give him the spot. A spot ahead of Leo Santa Cruz, that's right. I mean, we're not rating the fighter for one particular fight so much as an entire body of work, an accumulated effort, and then we are cross-comparing that effort with the efforts of what other fighters are out there. And if Carl can pull this miracle off, well, yeah, you gotta give him the spot. You gotta give him the credit. Carl wins this fight, he could very well emerge in the number 8 spot, pushing Leo down to number 9, and Juan Francisco Estrada to number 10, effectively bumping Kosei Tanaka off the list altogether. The saving grace for Kosei, however, is that the mandate has already come down from the WBO. The order for Kosei to challenge Kazuto Ioka, who's ranked at number 7, that's come down, and if Kosei wins that fight, he'll bump Kazuto off this list and likely occupy his spot. So there's still a silver lining there for Kosei. But as far as anyone else cracking this list, you know, any of these unified champions that are running around, Josh Taylor at 140, Jose Ramirez at 140, Errol Spence at 147, Artur Beterbiev at 175. As far as any of those guys getting a spot, well, it's going to be difficult because you forget that while those guys are unified champions, Carl Frampton at one point was a unified champion. After he beat Scott Quigg, he was in possession of the IBF and WBA titles. He has already been there and done that. But he, unlike those aforementioned fighters, has been a champion, a full-fledged champion, in more than one weight class. And he has beaten more active reigning world champions than any of them. Than Josh Taylor, than Jose Ramirez, than Errol Spence, than Artur Beterbiev.
Those are the facts.
So he will, in effect, have a more credible argument than any of the aforementioned fighters, thereby substantiating why he's being ranked in the first fucking place. All he needs is the hardware to facilitate that rank. Now, I'm not telling you he's going to get it. I'm not telling you I like his odds. I'm just telling you that if he wins the fight, that's how the cookie's going to crumble. Then when you got a fighter who's done so much already and is still adding things to their resume, adding world championship scalps to their overall body of work, it must be reflected on the list. Otherwise, the list itself is a redundancy. It's useless.
There's no point in it.
As the list is attempting to rate the skills of the fighters ranked within it.
That's what it's for.
You'll excuse me for saying so, but I think it's going to take quite a bit of skill from Carl Frampton to try to pry that belt away from Jamel Herring. In all likelihood, maybe he doesn't. Maybe he falters. But if he proves me wrong and he proves the naysayers wrong, it's got to be reflected. It's got to count for something. If anything, this kind of situation raises the grade, elevates the level of the list itself, as the weakest link on the chain in that situation would have to be Leo Santa Cruz, a 3-division champion. We all have our quips, our anecdotes about Leo, but better still, he is a full-fledged 3-division champion. So what does that say about the list when the guy in the most danger of being bumped off is a guy who's been a champion in 3 weight classes? All things considered, that is an accumulation of elite level guys, the most elite level guys, the most proven guys, as opposed to those popularity contest lists, those opinion poll lists you see in very popular periodicals that pass themselves off as pound for pound lists, though they do it in a very uneven way. I mean, to this day, I've seen lists floating around where they got Errol Spence ranked ahead of anyone from Alexander Usyk, an undisputed champion, a former undisputed champion, to Juan Francisco Estrada, and I see these lists and I ask myself, what logic is being employed here? Because Errol hasn't accomplished the same things that they've accomplished. What are you telling me? That because he beat Sean Porter, you're gonna rank him ahead of Alexander Usyk? Did you rank Kell Brook as a pound-for-pound fighter when he beat Sean Porter all those years ago? Before Errol Spence? Back when Sean was undefeated? Did you do that? I'd say no, right? I'd say no. So what the hell are you doing that now? With Errol, why are you doing that with Errol Spence when it comes to him?
Popularity.
I mean, I've seen lists where Kazuto Ioka and Kosei Tanaka don't register so much as a blip. And I'm wondering, okay, what are you rating these fighters for doing exactly? Because it seems like you're just ranking familiar faces in very cushy spots as opposed to using the list as a gauge, a measure for the skills of the fighters ranked within it. You're not telling me that you've seen so much from Spence and you haven't seen so much from Usyk, Kosei, Kazuto. But that's the way some of those lists are. Whereas, we here at Ring IQ, we hold ourselves to a higher standard than the fluff you find out there in association with other lists. So if Carl can get the job done, he is going to get the credit.